Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. My name is Abdallah Kharsa. I'm a second year medical student, and inshallah, today we're going to be covering Hemodynamics 1 and 2. So, inshallah, this session is going to have everything you need for your final. There's a lot of confusing topics in this lecture, so I try to arrange them in a way that's very simple. There's a lot of stuff you don't need to know. We're going to cover pretty much everything you need to know, inshallah. So, if you have any questions, feel free to open your mic. Feel free to type in the chat, I'll see it, or just stop me. So let's get started. First of all, what is hemodynamics, right? Because it's a pretty scary word when you look at it. Hemo basically means blood, and dynamic means move. So we're studying how blood moves within the body. But this is a very general lecture, and it ties into a lot of other lectures. So as a simple advice, I'd like you to just integrate everything in this lecture with other lectures. Can you send the PDF, please? It's going to be in the description of the. Yeah, okay, they sent it. Great. So, first of all, we're going to have some definitions. So, first of all, blood pressure. Blood pressure is the pushing force that blood applies on the wall of the vessel. So, you can imagine as blood flows, if it flows harder or it hits the walls more, it's going to have higher blood pressure. Okay. Secondly, we're going to talk about resistance. Resistance is the force that blood must overcome to pass, right? So you know how this guy right here is pushing, and yeah, it's pushing against resistance. So the harder it is for blood to flow, the more resistance there is. And resistance can be defined by a formula. It's the pressure gradient over blood flow. And you might be thinking, what is this triangle looking thing, right? So what is a pressure gradient? Let's say you have a vessel, and in this vessel, you have a pressure of 25 millimeters of mercury right here, and a pressure of 5 millimeters of mercury right here. This pressure difference right here is going to cause blood to move in this direction. And this is really important because without this, blood won't flow. If there's no pressure gradient, blood won't move. So I just want you to remember that for blood to flow, you need a pressure gradient. And I want you to remember this formula, okay? Resistance equals change in pressure over blood flow. Is everything clear so far? Does anyone have any questions? All good? Okay, let's keep going. So we already have a question. We just talked about the formula for resistance. Can somebody read this question, or do I read it? Okay, I'll read it since you guys probably just joined. So it's asking which vessel has the highest vascular resistance. Pretty simple, طيب. Can someone remind me what was the formula? Was it blood flow over pressure gradient, or pressure gradient over blood flow, or were they multiplied, or what was going on?
Pressure gradient over blood flow.
Pressure gradient over blood flow. Okay, so can you tell me what do you think the answer is?
Probably C.
Probably C. Okay, so let me open my calculator real quick. Can I draw? Okay, I can draw. Okay, so C is 20 over 1400. Okay, C is 20 over 1400. 20 over 1400 is going to be 0.01. Okay,
Actually, maybe A.
you say maybe A. Okay, someone in the chat also said A. A is 100 over 1000. So 100 divided by 1000 is going to be 0.1. And that's correct. That is the highest vascular resistance right here. So just remember that formula. It's pretty simple. They usually don't bring a lot of calculation questions, but I put it here to make sure you understand the relationship between pressure gradient and resistance and blood flow. And when you ask about the highest vascular resistance, I want you to immediately think about the highest pressure gradient because it's going to be pushing against it. Okay. Sorry. If you when you're telling you about the highest vascular resistance, I want you to think about the highest pressure gradient because they're directly proportional. Because simply, if you want the resistance to be as high as possible, you want this to be as high as possible, right? That's a very weird circle. Drawing on Canva is not very good. Okay, let's keep going. Right here, we have the whole circulatory system. I know it's not very realistic because you have this whole human being and then you have a heart and lungs right here, but don't worry. I want you to look at this and remember how blood flows, right? So when blood is pumped out of the right ventricle, it's going to go to the lungs, and we call that the pulmonary circulation because that's where the blood gets oxygenated at the lungs. طيب? When blood isn't at the pulmonary circulation and it's pumped out the left ventricle and it's going to the rest of the body, we call that the systemic circulation. Okay, so what's the difference between the two? First of all, the pulmonary circulation at any given point of time holds 9% of all blood. So 9% of all your blood is at the pulmonary circulation. But I'm going to ask a question. I want you guys to answer. Does more blood flow through the systemic or the pulmonary? Systemic? Do you have any other answers? Same. Someone said same. Exactly. So all the blood that passes through systemic circulation is going to have to pass through the pulmonary circulation. All the blood that went here and oxygenated your body is going to have to go to the lungs and get oxygenated again. طيب? Sorry, it goes like this. طيب? Is that clear, everyone? Do we move on? Right, we are moving on. Great. Oh, and I want you to just keep this number in mind that the rate of blood flow through your systemic or pulmonary circulation is 5 liters per minute. طيب? They're not going to ask you memorizing questions, but this is mainly for understanding. Okay? So we're going to have some more definitions. The next one is conductance. Conductance is the complete opposite of resistance. طيب? The formula for it is literally 1 over resistance. So it's the measure of blood flow for a given pressure difference. So let's say I have a big can, طيب? a really big pipe. Okay, this pipe is going to have a higher conductance because it's able to conduct more fluid or whatever maybe. طيب? If it's smaller, like the smaller vessel, is going to have a lower conductance. This is described by this way, which is that conductance is proportional to the diameter. So if something's bigger, then it's going to have a higher conductance. And it's to the power of 4, and you might be wondering why. And we're going to talk about a formula later on, which is going to describe why conductance is proportional to diameter to the power of 4. Like, it's not really that important, conductance, if you ask me. But there's so many definitions in your slides, and I just wanted to include it for the sake of completion. So, moving on. We talked about blood flow, and we talked about velocity. Does anyone know the difference between the two? You can open your mic, you can type in the chat. Okay. So, blood flow is the volume of blood that passes through a vessel per time. So if we have a vessel and blood passes through it, let's say 5 liters of blood pass through it per second, that's the blood flow. طيب? Velocity, on the other hand, is the blood flow divided by the cross-section area because we're trying to get the speed. We're trying to see how fast blood is flowing through this. Blood flow is the volume and velocity is the speed. That's a pretty good representation, honestly. But I want you to remember the cross-section area. But how do I erase, by the way? Canva is really bad at drawing. Okay. I want you to remember that it's divided by the cross-section area. Because if you have a really big vessel, it's going to have a high blood flow because a lot of blood volume is passing through it. But it's going to have a lower velocity because its cross-sectional area is so high. طيب, is that clear to everyone? Okay, we're going to move on. So, capillaries have the highest cross-section area in the body. Now, you might be wondering, aren't capillaries really small? You guys know what capillaries are, right? Capillaries are really small. So how do they have the highest cross-sectional area? This is because we're counting the total cross-sectional area. Let's go back to this image right here. All these capillaries in your body, if you add them together, they have more than any of your other blood vessels. So they have the highest cross-sectional area. Right? So when you measure it that way, it turns out, okay, this is the cross-section area. When you measure it this way, it turns out that capillaries have the highest velocity. Okay, I'm sorry, I just jumped slides, but I'm trying to explain it in a way that is really clear to you guys. We just said that velocity is blood flow over cross-sectional area. So since capillaries have the highest cross-sectional area, they're gonna have, sorry, it's gonna have the lowest velocity, guys. I'm sorry. Capillaries are gonna have the lowest velocity. If you look here, the cross-section area, the aorta has the lowest cross-section area, so it's in turn gonna have the highest velocity. Blood flows capillaries the slowest because they have the highest cross-section area. Guys, did I mess you guys up? Yeah, you mean lowest velocity, exactly. Is that clear to everyone? Capillaries have the highest, so we divide by total cross-section area or single. We divide by total, but they're never going to ask you to calculate it. طيب? You don't have to memorize these numbers. حتى. These numbers right here, you don't have to know them. And this is just for your understanding. I want you to remember that capillaries have the highest cross-sectional area and the aorta has the lowest. Because of that, the capillaries have the slowest velocity and the aorta has the highest. But you guys know that this is actually good because when blood flows the capillaries slow, this allows exchange to happen between the capillaries and the tissue. طيب? And you want blood to flow through the aorta quickly because you want blood to go to the rest of the body quickly. Does that make sense? Is that clear to you guys? طيب. Perfect. I'm really glad. طيب. Amazing. Can someone answer this question? I want someone to read it and answer it, not just answer it. طيب. I'll read it. C. Someone already said C. Which component of the circulation has the smallest cross-section area? The aorta. Despite the aorta being so big, in some people, some diseases, it's going to be like this big. Right? Despite it being massive on its own, it has the smallest total cross-section area. And this is literally how questions come in the exam. This lecture can look scary, but the questions that come on it are seriously so easy. Perfect. Thank you so much. Right. Going back to this. Let's talk about the pressure that blood has as it flows throughout these circulations. We said that all the blood that flows through the pulmonary flows to the systemic. Right? When blood is pumped out the right ventricle into the pulmonary, is it going to have high pressure or low pressure? When it's pumped out from the right ventricle into the pulmonary circulation, it's going to have high. Exactly. It's going to have high pressure. And when it's returning to the heart, it's going to have low pressure. After it returns to the heart and it gets pumped out from the left ventricle through the aorta, it's going to have the highest pressure it's ever going to have. It gets pumped out the strongest. And when it's returning from the capillaries back to the heart, back to the right ventricle through the vena cava, it's going to have the lowest pressure. This, I just want you to remember. I want it to make sense to you, and I want you to remember because it's going to come in questions later on. They might literally ask you, well, which of the following is going to have the lowest pressure? Okay, and they're going to put your pulmonary veins, pulmonary arteries, systemic veins, systemic arteries. So which one has the lowest? Which one has the complete lowest? It's going to be systemic veins. طيب? A lot of people ask about this, the different pressure readings in different points of the heart. طيب? You do have to remember them, but not for this lecture. In this lecture, only one of them is mentioned, okay, which is the right atrial pressure or the central venous pressure. Now, when it comes to the actual definition, central venous pressure and right atrial pressure aren't the exact same thing. The central venous pressure measures the pressure right around the vena cava when they're close to the heart. The right atrial pressure is literally inside the right atrium. طيب? But in regards to your slides, they're regarded as the same thing. طيب? So I just don't want you to get confused because you might see it somewhere else being referred to as two different things. You might see a diagram that says right atrial pressure is 2 to 8, and then your slides say that it's 0. This is because the central venous pressure is 0. Just consider that the normal is 0 and it can go up to 8. That's about it. طيب? Is this clear to everyone? Because later on, when you take these in depth, we're not going to take the blood pressure in depth. When you take some heart diseases, they might tell you, well, this one's elevated, that one's elevated, and you're supposed to recognize it. طيب? But it's not for this lecture. It says 8 in the cardiac output lecture. That's exactly what I'm saying. The right atrial pressure can be 2 to 8. Okay, perfect. I'll repeat it. The pressure inside the right atrium is 2 to 8. The pressure in the central veins is 0. These are the central veins, referring to the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. طيب? They're sometimes regarded as the same thing. طيب? They're sometimes regarded as the same thing, which is the case for Dr. Muni's in hemodynamics. طيب? So I want you to consider central venous pressure being the same thing as right atrial pressure since they're so close to each other, and the normal being 0, because that's what it says in your slides. Okay? But just so that you don't get confused when you go and solve questions or whatever, because practice is really important for this lecture. I don't want you to get confused. So consider that it's 0, but it can go up to 8. It can be 2, it can be 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's normal. That's not abnormal. Does that make sense to you guys? Did I confuse you? Okay, perfect. Right. So why is this important? What's the point of knowing central venous pressure and right atrial pressure? Let me tell you. There are many things that increase it, and these can be disease states. طيب, what increases central venous pressure? The answer is anything that increases venous return. Very simply, if more blood is returning to the heart, okay, there's going to be higher pressure in the central veins and the right atrium. Does that make sense? Right. So anything that increases venous return. What increases venous return? It could be venous constriction. So if the veins in your body constrict, more blood is going to return. That's an increase in central venous pressure and the right atrial pressure because it's increasing venous return. The next one is heart failure. If the heart isn't pumping blood out, more blood is going to be returning. Very simple. So that increases venous return. Does that make sense? Is that clear to you guys? If anything is unclear, you can stop me anytime. Perfect. طيب. The next is arterial dilation. طيب. This you might be thinking, طيب ايش دخل arterioles? We're talking about veins here. Let's go back here. If these are arterioles, طيب. If these dilate, if these open up, that's what dilate means. More blood is going to pass through them and back to the heart, and that's going to increase the venous return. طيب. So we talked about heart failure, venous constriction, and arterial dilation. If anything is unclear, stop me. Seriously, if that makes sense, we're moving on. The next is increased blood volume. Very simple. If you have more blood is going to return. It's that straightforward. The last one is called something called the venous pump. Like, does anyone know what the venous pump is? Can someone type in the chat or unmute their mic? Tell me, what is the venous pump? Right. Okay. Pass. The venous pump, my friends, is when veins pass by muscles, and if those muscles relax, the veins push blood through. So if you're running and your muscles are contracting, they're going to push on the veins and more blood is going to return to your heart. So the opposite is true. If you're standing still or you're sitting down and your muscles aren't contracting, is there going to be more venous return or less? Less, exactly, less. Because the muscles aren't contracting. So they're not pushing the veins, they're not squeezing the veins. So there's going to be less venous return. Another thing is that veins have valves. طيب. I want you to know this because these valves can break. We're going to talk about this in a bit. طيب. When veins are squeezed, this opens up the valve and pushes the blood in one direction. The point of the valves is to prevent blood from flowing backwards. طيب. Only veins have valves. Arteries don't have valves. طيب. But what have? Okay, we have a question. Sorry. Can someone read this question, or do I just read it? Any volunteer? Okay, I'll read the question. It says a 65-year-old man is suffering from congestive heart failure. طيب. Underline heart failure. He has a cardiac output of 4, blah, 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 blah. Further test by cardiologist reveals that the patient has a right atrial pressure of 10. طيب. This is increased. صح ولا لا? An increase in which of the following would be expected in this patient? طيب. These are some confusing words. I just want you to cross out hydrostatic, cross out colloid osmotic, cross out this. Okay. Just what do you guys think? What do you guys think is going on in this patient? Not what do you guys think is the answer? He has congestive heart failure and his right atrial pressure is increased. What happened? What's the reason? Okay, E, but why? Why is it the E? I want you guys to understand it. He has heart failure and his right atrial pressure is increased. Why is the right atrial pressure increasing? More return, more venous pressure. More blood is returning to the right. Exactly. He has heart failure, so the heart isn't pumping blood. We literally said it. If you have heart failure, there's going to be more venous return. That's going to increase central venous pressure, right atrial pressure. This is a question from Guyton. Like, I'm serious. This is a question from Guyton Hall. I asked the hardest type of questions, okay? But if you can solve this, well, you're chilling. You understand the concept. I'm really glad you guys answered it correctly. Does anyone have any other answer? Anything else? Anyone want me to repeat anything we just talked about? All good? House. Okay. So, still talking about standing up. Okay. Is it because of dilation of arterioles? Not in this case. Dilation of arterioles does increase venous return. But this patient has heart failure. And because, look, the heart is a pump. If you're not pumping blood away from the heart, there's going to be more blood going back. Blood isn't pumping back. Blood is pooling around the heart. Okay? Does that make sense? Blood is it's not pushing blood away, but blood is staying around. Perfect. Okay. But for central venous, when you think central, I want you to think of the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava immediately. طيب. Let's talk about the pressures when you're standing. If you ask me, this has nothing to do with hemodynamics. Your doctor put a bunch of topics in the slides وsaid يلا طيب. But I'm including it for the sake of completion, but it mostly concerns other lectures, طيب, like the lectures that talk about the control of blood pressure. Okay? So when you're standing up, the venous pressure at your heart is zero. We already said this. We said the central venous pressure is zero. صح ولا لا? طيب. As you go down with gravity, the pressure is going to increase due to gravity. طيب. You don't have to, I think this is given another lecture, like calculating the change between 0 and 10, 10. It's not concerning this lecture. طيب. As you go down, the pressure at around the feet is going to be about 90. طيب. Wallah, drawing with a mouse pad is horrible. Okay. But blood below the heart has high pressure. Above the heart, it has low pressure. This isn't shown in the diagram, but blood, like right here in this man's arm, the venous pressure would be like negative 50 or something. Like, so we said venous pressure at the feet is about 90. I have this in red because your doctor has it in red, and it seemed like it's pretty important. But he might want you to memorize it. In general, again, they don't ask you about these type of numbers. I want you to understand. Like, we talked about venous pressure. What's the case for arteries? Let me erase. What's the case for arteries? The arterial pressure near the heart is around 90. Okay, this is the pressure at around the heart. It's around 90 to 100. Okay, as you go down, it's also going to increase. So subsequently, it's going to be even higher. At around the feet, the blood pressure of the artery is going to be like 190. We said at the feet, the venous pressure is like 90. The arterial pressure is going to be like 190 because it's starting 100 more, and it's literally starting 0, 90, 90 to 100. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? Is that clear? The arterial pressure, on the other hand. Okay, perfect. So we're starting at 100 instead of 0. So you go down, it increases, but ends up being more. But venous pressure at the feet is 90. If it's at your arm, it's negative 90. Arterial pressure at the foot is about 190 because you're starting at a higher number. Okay. What happens if you stand too long? I want you guys to recall when we talked about the valves right here. I want you guys to recall these valves. Okay. What happens if you stand too long? These valves, if blood pools in them too much, they can break. The valves can break. And this can cause the whole vein to do some weird things. If you look at it on the surface, it looks like this. The veins pop out. These are called varicose veins. And it's normal for veins to show on a person, but not to this extent. This looks like a worm. طيب? They might literally describe it like that in a question. They might say it's a worm. Okay. So I just want you guys to remember if someone's standing for too long, blood can pool at their feet. Okay, blood can collect on their feet, and that can destroy the valves, and that can cause something called varicose veins. Is this clear to you guys? Okay, perfect. Right. Can someone read this question? I'm sick of reading these questions. We have a million questions because I want you guys to leave this class session completely understanding this lecture. Can I have someone read this?
Yeah.
Perfect. Go ahead.
A 36-year-old female cash register attendant visits her physician complaining about the large surface veins in her legs. Her blood pressure is 125/94, and she has a heart rate of 78. She's 5'3" and weighs 125 pounds. As part of her weight loss program, she has been jogging 2 miles each day for the past 2 months. Which of the following is most likely cause of her varicose veins in this woman?
Okay, what do you think the answer is, Riyad?
E?
E? Why do you think it's E?
Because she's standing for too long at the cash register.
Perfect. You guys know it's E, not just because it's the longest answer. By the way, when it's in doubt, no, I'm joking. When in doubt, just put the longest answer, no, I'm joking. But basically, she's a cash register. She's standing for a long period of time. Blood is collecting at her feet and it's destroying the valves and it's causing large surface veins. These are called varicose veins. How did they ask it? طيب? This is literally how questions come. This is literally how they might ask you about this. Very simple. Or they might get you a picture. They might get you this picture. Or they're telling you, Wallah, they're complaining of this, and that. It's going to make it even easier for you guys. طيب? Let's move on. Let's talk about the role of each blood vessel. طيب يعني what each blood vessel, whether it's an artery or vein or arterial or whatever it does. We said the aorta and the arteries transport blood to the tissues under high pressure. طيب this is because they have high velocity. طيب does this make sense? Arterioles are the major site of control and high resistance. Okay, let's recall. This is an artery. Right before capillary, you have arterioles. I want you guys to think of these as like checkpoints. طيب this is where your sympathetic nervous system controls your blood flow. They can constrict and they can dilate because they have the highest resistance. They're most able to block the blood flow or increase it. طيب is this clear to you guys? Arteries have high pressure. Arterioles have high resistance. They're the major site of controlling the blood flow. طيب okay, let's keep going. Capillaries after the arterioles are the major site of nutrient exchange. طيب if you block the arterioles, you're going to have less exchange. If you open them up, you're going to have more exchange. Very simple. طيب peripheral veins and the great veins like the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava transport the blood back to the heart under low pressure. طيب we talked about this earlier. We said they have the lowest pressure. The systemic veins have the lowest pressure, and they act as reservoirs. طيب I want you guys to keep this in mind for a second. I have a little analogy here for you guys to remember this. I want you to think of the heart as a pump, arteries as high-speed highways delivering the blood, arterioles as ramps that control the traffic, capillaries as small city streets where there is exchange, and veins as the roads that bring cars back to the pump, but they're under low pressure. Okay, they're under low pressure, and they act as reservoirs. We're going to talk about reservoirs in a second, طيب? But is everything else clear so far? Okay. I'm gonna assume all is good. Perfect. Okay. We're gonna talk about resistance. We defined resistance. We said it's the pressure gradient over the blood flow. There are two kinds of resistances or whatever that may occur. Okay. One is called in series and one is called in parallel. طيب? When you add up the resistance like this, like they're in front of each other, this is called in series. This is our A, B, C, whatever. Oh, this is arterial, this is arteries, arterial, this is capillary, this is venule, this is vein. طيب? When you measure them like this, you add them up very simply. It's RA plus B plus C plus whatever. طيب? So if this was 5 and this was 5, this was 5, we just add them up. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. The one that occurs in your body is in parallel. Let me just go back to this image. طيب? Right here, you see how they're stacked up on top of each other? Look. See how they're stacked up on top of each other? This is called in parallel. طيب? This allows your body to control blood flow to a certain organ. فيعني this could be the kidneys, and this could be the liver, and this could be the whatever. طيب? But they're in parallel. The way you measure the total resistance in the system is completely different. Okay, if this is R1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we add it like this. The total is 1 over R. I'm sorry, the total, we measure it by 1 over total equals 1 over R1, 1 over R2, 1 over R3. طيب? So if this was 5, and this was 5, and this was 5, and you did 1 over total equals 1 over 5, 1 over 5, 1 over 5, you're going to find that the total, when you flip it, when you get the answer, when you flip this, because it's 1 over R, it's going to be lower than any one of these. طيب? Okay? Is this clear to you guys? It's going to be low. We're going to have a question, and we're going to completely break this down. طيب? Is everything what I said so far clear? Do you guys want me to repeat anything? Because I have a question on this, and I want you guys to answer the question. Perfect. All good? Okay. I'm just going to assume all is good. But 3 vascular beds are arranged in parallel within a tissue. Okay, so in parallel, their individual resistances are 10 and 20 and 40. What is the total vascular resistance? Just type in the chat. What do you guys think the answer is? I want you guys to calculate it on your own and tell me what you think the answer is. We said this is the formula. 1 over R total equals 1 over R plus 1 over R, 1 over R, and so on. طيب? Okay, I'm gonna go through it. طيب. We said if it's in parallel, we measure them like this. 1 over the whole resistance equals 1 over any one of them, 1 over 10, over plus 1 over 20, 1 over 40. And طيب, I'm just going to calculate this, and I'm going to tell you guys what the answer is, okay? When you calculate it, 1 divided by 20 plus 1 divided by 10 plus 1 divided by 40, I'm going to get 1 over R equals, okay, someone said 5.7. We're going to get 1 over R equals 0.175. Okay, if you flip the R to the other side, okay, and then you do 1 over 0.175, 1 over 0.175, you're going to get 5.7, which is exactly why you are correct. Thank you so much. طيب, I'm glad you guys were able to do it on your own. I may have given you too little time, but I'm glad you guys understand it. طيب, this is literally how they ask the question. They're either going to tell you it's in parallel or series. They might get you a picture. They might get you a picture like this, and it's going to say 10, 3, 4, whatever, طيب, and you just calculate it. And they might get it in series. In series, صراحة too easy. They usually get the parallel one, but it's very, very important. This is one of the most high yield topics in this lecture. Okay, if all is good, I'm going to move on. طيب. We have this thing in hemodynamics, which I hate, so and a lot of people hate this. It's called Poiseuille or whatever. There's a weird way of spelling it. طيب. I don't want you guys to remember the formula. They will never ask you to calculate something from the formula. There are principles derived from the formula that I want you to understand. طيب. The first one is that any increase in the radius, طيب, any increase in the radius, which is the width of a vessel, causes an increase in flow and a decrease in resistance to the fourth power. That's a big sentence. Let's break it down. طيب. If we have a blood vessel, طيب, I'm going to scribble on this for a second. طيب. طيب. If you have a blood vessel and the radius is 2, and you double it, you double the radius, the resistance to blood flow in this vessel is going to be inversely proportional, opposite proportional to the fourth power. طيب. Is this clear? The blood flow, on the other hand, is going to increase by the fourth power. Okay, so let me just erase right here so you guys can see the blood flow in these two vessels. The first one, Q is blood flow, by the way. طيب. The first one has a blood flow of 10. The second one has a blood flow of 160. We doubled the radius. طيب. We did times 2 to the radius. طيب. Can someone just say why they think the blood flow went from 10 to 160? Increased radius. Exactly. But the point of this is that it's to the power of 4. طيب. It increased to 160 because we doubled it. طيب. We did times 2. طيب. But because we're affecting the radius, it's going to be times 2 to the power, it's going to 2 to the power of 4. 2 to the power of 4 is 16. Exactly. 10x 16. طيب. We doubled the radius. طيب. It went to 4. طيب. The radius was 2. It became 4. The blood flow was 10. It became 10 times 2 to the power of 4. Exactly. Exactly. So it became 160. 10 times 16. Exactly. Right. That's the first very, very important principle of Poiseuille's law. Okay. Because they might very simply get you, and wallah, we doubled the radius, what happened to the resistance? Or what happened to the blood flow? طيب. Or they might get you numbers. They might tell you, and wallah, the radius was increased from this to that. What happened to the resistance if it was this in the beginning? طيب. They might make you calculate it. But if you understand that an increase in radius causes an increase in flow to the fourth power and decrease in flow to the fourth power, you'll be good. Right? And this is important in arterioles because we said they're resistance vessels. Right? We said they control the blood flow. Right? The second thing that I want you to know from Poiseuille's law is something called hematocrit. Right? Can someone tell me what hematocrit is from F&D? Right? Can someone tell me what they remember hematocrit to be? Come on, guys. I want to see some participation. طيب. Do I move on? Pure RBC. Very good. Very, very good. In your blood, you have fluid, which we call plasma, and you have red blood cells, which are red blood cells. طيب. The hematocrit is the measure of those red blood cells. You can think of it as the solidness of the vessel. طيب. Let me just erase. طيب. From Poiseuille's law, if you increase the hematocrit, so you're increasing the solid bits of your blood, طيب, the viscosity is going to increase. طيب. The viscosity, what's the viscosity? It's basically the thickness of the blood. طيب. I want you to think of honey. Honey is very viscous, it's thick. طيب. It's unlike water. طيب. You're increasing the viscosity. This is going to increase resistance. طيب. منطقيا. If I pour water or if I pour honey, which one moves faster? The water. طيب. Because the honey has a higher viscosity. طيب. So when you increase the hematocrit content of the blood, it's going to have a higher resistance. It's going to flow slower. طيب. Is this clear to you guys? Then move on. طيب. We are moving on. Okay. Another question. If the radius of a blood vessel decreases, wow, that was fast. Someone already said D. طيب. If the radius of blood vessel decreases by 50%, by what factor is blood flow changed? We pretty much did the same thing here, but it's the opposite. طيب. We're doing times 1/2. طيب. But we said this is radius and blood flow. طيب. If we do 1/2 to the power of 4, we're gonna get 1/16. Exactly, 0.5 to the power of 4. Excellent, excellent. So it's gonna be 1/16. طيب. Does anyone else want me to repeat this? Does anyone want me to repeat this? Is this clear? خلاص. No, perfect. I'm so glad. طيب. Right here we have this very scary diagram, which I really, really hate. طيب. Now, if you look at this and you're thinking, Ya Allah, why did I enter medicine? I could be studying finance right now. What's the point of this? This is so ugly. Like there's so many squiggles going on. Don't worry. Like we're gonna break it down bit by bit. But I don't want you to overcomplicate it. I don't want you to look at the small details and get lost in them because they're really not that important. They're not gonna bring a picture of this and ask you, Wallah, why did this happen? طيب. The point of this is for your understanding for later topics. طيب. Let's break it down bit by bit. طيب. We're at the left atrium. طيب. When the blood enters the left ventricle is going to be pumping blood out. طيب. But when it pumps, it reaches a systolic pressure of 120, and when it relaxes, the diastolic is 0. طيب. When blood leaves the left ventricle through the aortic valve and enters the aorta, it's going to have a systolic of 120 and diastolic of 80. What happened? Why is the diastolic not 0 anymore? Why is it 80? That's because the aorta or any artery, in that sense, is very elastic. طيب. It's mostly the aorta. It's the most elastic. It has a lot of elastic fibers. طيب. This allows it to be recoiling. And we're going to talk about a property of this later on, which shows why during the relaxation of the heart, during diastole of the heart, why the diastolic pressure is going to be still 80. It's not going to reach 0. Right? Is this clear to you guys? Because this is where most people are confused. Wallah, why was this 0 and why is this 80? I'll keep going. طيب. As we move on to the large arteries, it goes up a little bit. You don't need to know why. It goes down as you move down through the branches. As we move throughout to the small arteries and the arterioles there. When you get to the capillaries, that's when blood pressure is going to get really low. طيب. Because it has a really low velocity here, and you have the exchange here. When it gets to the veins, it's going to be the lowest. طيب. When you move from the veins to the right atrium, you're going to have some slight fluctuation, just like you had in the left atrium, because they do contract, but they're very weak. Right? They're much weaker than the ventricles. Right? Then when it gets to the ventricle, it's going to start pulsating. And when it gets to the pulmonary arteries, it's going to be similar to when we were at the aorta, because it's not going to be 0 anymore. Okay? Can I say that it's 80 for the aorta because the aortic valve opens at 80, or it's not related? The aortic valve opens at the afterloop. طيب. The diastolic pressure, I don't want you to don't mix in these two concepts. These are unrelated. طيب. the aortic valve opens at something called the afterloop. طيب, that's the pressure that the left ventricle has to overcome. I don't think that's 80. Is that 80? No, I don't think so. We're measuring the pressure at the aorta at the time of relaxation of the heart. طيب. Why it's not zero, we're going to talk about in a bit. That's because the aorta is accepting the blood. طيب. I don't want you to overcomplicate this. I just want you to take away from this that the veins have very low pressure. The left ventricle has the arteries have higher. The left ventricle pulsates from 120 to 0. The large arteries pulsate from 120 to 80. طيب. Is this clear? Did you understand it? Perfect. I'm glad. طيب. And lastly, it's going to go to the capillaries in the pulmonary circulation and so on. طيب. It's going to be similar to. طيب. This is what I want you to know. I want you to know that the highest pressure, which is also pulsing, is in the left ventricle during the systole and the aorta. طيب. That's where the pressure is highest. طيب. That's right here. طيب. The biggest pressure drop is at the arterioles. طيب. Biggest pressure drop is at the arterioles. Can someone guess why pressure drops so much at the arterioles? Something we talked about earlier. It's because of the resistance. Dilation. No. We dilate the arteries, we constrict we dilate the arterioles, we constrict them. But the point of arterioles is that they are the site of high resistance. طيب. So when you have high resistance, the blood's going to slow down, the blood pressure is going to drop. طيب. So that's why the blood pressure has a high drop at the arterioles. طيب. So they control the resistance. After the arterioles, there's almost no pulse. طيب. That's because veins don't pulsate like arteries do. طيب. Failures have low pressure and low velocity, as we said way back, because they're the site of nutrient exchange. The lowest pressure is at the right atrium, and the veins. طيب. Right atrium and the veins. طيب. The pulmonary pressure is much lower than the systemic. طيب. This is simple because the blood is flowing, this smaller amount of blood flowing. طيب. I do want you to remember this, that the pulmonary has a lower pressure than the systemic. طيب. Is this clear to you guys? طيب. We're moving on. Which of the following has the lowest blood pressure? This is a real question. I'm not, guys, you're going to think I'm getting you guys like the stupidest questions on the planet. This is literally the type of questions they ask. B, exactly. Does anyone have any problem with this? I don't think so, Salah. It's very simple. طيب. Perfect. Why do I have a picture of a bottle and a balloon? But didn't we say it's the same amount of blood flow? They have the same, they're holding 9% of the blood. But you're completely right. You're completely right to say that. At any given moment, the pulmonary circulation is going to be holding 9%. طيب. But the amount of blood flowing, it's the same. Any blood that flows through the systemic is flowing to the pulmonary. But the pulmonary is holding less. It's a smaller, not slow, it's a smaller circulation. Is this clear? Perfect. I'm glad. طيب. Why do I have a bottle and a balloon? طيب. If I blow into this balloon, it's going to distend. No problem. If I blow into this balloon, it's going to distend. طيب. If I blow into this bottle, it won't. This is because of a property called compliance. طيب. This is because of a property called compliance. طيب. Balloon is more compliant than the water bottle. It's more distensible. These two things are very related. We're going to talk about the difference between them, but they're very related. طيب. So what's the difference between them? Compliance, also called capacitance, طيب. They're the same thing. And don't confuse them with any of the other words that start with CAP, like conductance or capillaries. طيب. Compliance and capacitance basically measure how willing a blood vessel is to accept blood. And if something is more compliant, if a human being is more compliant, that means they're following orders. طيب. If I give this vessel blood and it accepts it, it's more compliant. طيب. It's less rigid. طيب. But it measures the compliance of the capacitance, measures the total quantity of blood that can be stored in a given portion of the circulation for each millimeter of mercury. It's a lot of yaps, that's why it's a gray. I just want you guys to think of compliance as if I give this vessel at 10 millimeters of mercury, right? If I give this vessel an increase in pressure, how much volume increases is how much compliance. And if I increase the pressure by 10 and the volume increases by 100, that's a high compliance. If I increase the pressure by 10 and I increase it by 50, that's a low compliance. The vessel isn't accepting the blood. Does that make sense? We're gonna keep going. If you guys want me to repeat anything at all, feel free to interrupt me. طيب? The capacitance of veins is 2.4 times that of arteries. Why? Veins are basically the site of storage. طيب? They accept the blood and they distend more. They're more compliant. طيب? Arteries have way less compliance. They don't accept the blood as much. طيب? But this is why, remember a million slides ago when we said that veins are the blood reservoir? Veins are the blood reservoir, where the blood, most of your blood at any given moment is in your veins. It's 24 times. Oh, I said 2.4. I think I misread it. So I thought that it says 24, but I misread it. You're right. طيب? The capacitance of veins is 24 times that of arteries. طيب? Is this clear? Do I move on to the sensibility? Perfect. I'm glad. طيب. The extensibility is the compliance normalized to the original volume. طيب? What does that mean? We're taking account how much the vessel originally had. Yani before I applied the pressure and before it accepted the blood. How much blood volume was there? That's the sensibility. Does this make sense? Yani we're accounting the difference. Is this clear? Don't worry about this yet. Don't worry about the last point. But is this clear so far? طيب. Can you repeat that? طيب. Let's say I have a blood vessel. طيب. And I increase the pressure by 10. Okay. And this vessel increases طيب, because it's compliant. The compliance is measuring how much volume increased here. We increased by 10, how much it increased for this time. The extensibility takes the same number and pretty much divides it by the original volume. The extensibility بشوف انه والله okay. How much did we originally have? Let's say that the vessel originally had 5 and after we extended it, it had 20. طيب? After we inflated it, it had 20. طيب? It divides it by 5. It divides it by 5. So we're looking at how balloon-like the thing is. How much does it inflate? Taking out of putting into equation the original volume. طيب? You'll understand this when we look at this example. Veins are 8 times more distensible than arteries. We said the veins are 24 times more compliant. Then why are they only 8 times more distensible? This is because veins hold more blood. They're blood reservoirs. طيب? So if you're dividing by the original blood volume, you're going to find that their distensibility is only 8 times more. طيب? By the way, these numbers are in your slides. I'm just explaining them side by side. Is this clear? Person who asked me to repeat, is that clear? Is everything clear? No problem. Perfect. If you have any questions, feel free to type. The pulmonary arteries are 6 times more distensible than systemic arteries. صراحة, you don't have to understand this. Just memorize it, honestly, because pulmonary arteries distend more. I think this is because of this amount of elastic tissue. طيب? Honestly, I put this here, but it's not important. Okay, let's move on to another thing. What blood vessels are most compliant? We already said veins are more compliant than arteries, right? Let's look at this on a graph. If I increase pressure by, let's say, 10 in an artery and a vein, the artery will have a small increase in volume, but the vein will have a high increase in volume. This shows that veins are more compliant than arteries. This is just demonstrating the concept we just talked about. Is this clear? I'm just emphasizing it. Right. Let's finally talk about the compliance of the aorta. Remember how we said when you pump blood into the aorta from the left ventricle, the systolic pressure is 120 and the diastolic is 80. طب why is that? When the ventricle contracts and it pushes blood into the aorta accepts the blood. طيب, I know that we said that the arteries have less compliance than the veins, but the aorta has a certain amount of compliance. طيب, it has a certain amount of compliance that allows it to accept the blood and when the ventricle is contracting, and then when the ventricle is relaxing, it recoils. But it's pretty much moving opposite of the heart. And when the heart pumps, the aorta accepts the blood. As the heart is relaxing, the aorta recoils back and it pushes the blood forward. Why is this useful? This is because you want blood to flow all the time. You don't want blood to just flow through your body when the ventricle contracts. You want it to flow even when the ventricle is relaxing, right? Because you have like your brain, for example. You need blood flow there constantly, right? If the aorta is staying relaxed and it's not recoiling, and you're only getting blood when the ventricle contracts, you're not going to get enough blood flow. You're not going to get enough movement through the circulation, because this aorta leads to the rest of your body. Right? Is this clear? Guys, just put a thumbs up, type yes, anything. Perfect. Could you repeat? Right, I'll repeat. Could you explain again? Right. We have the heart. طيب, this is the heart. Okay. The left ventricle contracts, طيب, and then it starts relaxing. While it's relaxing, blood doesn't immediately go from the aorta to the rest of the body. لا. It stays in the aorta for a second. طيب. It stays in the aorta because the aorta accepts the blood. It inflates and it fills up with blood, and then it recoils. Remember when we talked about elastic tissue? The aorta has a lot of elastic tissue. طيب. This allows it to recoil and push the blood forward. طيب. Is this clear? Because we want constant blood flow. طيب. Because when the ventricle is relaxing, if the aorta wasn't recoiling, we wouldn't keep having blood flow. And then and there's another use to this. But is this clear so far? To the guys who asked me to repeat, is this clear? Perfect. طيب. Do you guys know what coronary arteries are? What's a coronary artery? It's an artery which supplies blood to the heart. طيب. Those coronary arteries, they open up, they branch right here. حرفيا right here. طيب. I just imagine that I just drew them. طيب. This is the left ventricle, this is the aorta. The coronary arteries branch out right here. Because the aorta accepts the blood and it stands like this, طيب, this allows blood to flow into the coronary arteries. طيب. Because if the blood immediately خلاص got pushed from the ventricle past, خلاص, the blood wouldn't reach the heart. The blood wouldn't be able to supply the heart. Because there's a pause, because you're stopping for a second, this is allowing the blood to flow down to the coronary arteries. Is this clear? Is this point clear? Perfect. Anyone wants me to repeat that? خلاص, all good? Okay. Can you repeat? I'll repeat 100%. طيب, let me erase. Let me erase. طيب. This is the left ventricle of the heart. طيب. The heart, like any other organ, طيب, it has blood vessels that supply it. طيب. It has blood vessels, arteries that supply it. طيب. The heart pumps blood away from it. صح ولا لا? It's a pump. It pumps blood away from it. طيب, if you're only pumping blood away from you, كيف? How is the blood gonna go back and supply the heart? This is because just you need blood to pause for a second. طيب, we said that the aorta distends and accepts the blood. We said that the aorta distends and accepts the blood, and blood stays in the aorta for a second. This allows the blood, which stops here for a second, to flow down to the heart, to the coronary arteries. Right? Is this clear? Does it make sense now? Yes, I'm glad. Right. Let's just read the text. We said the aorta distends during systole. to store energy from ventricular ejection. This is because we want blood to keep moving, right? During diastole, مع إنه the word diastole means relaxation. The heart is relaxing, right? The heart itself is relaxing. The aorta recoils. It literally recoils like a rubber band, right? And it pushes blood forward, maintaining continuous blood flow. This recoil, يعني حتى not specifically the recoil, this relaxation, this distending, allows maintains coronary perfusion. Perfusion means blood flow, right? Since coronary flow occurs mainly during diastole, يعني we're in diastole, and the heart is relaxing. This is when the heart gets its blood supply, right? So we need the blood to be flowing down. We need the blood to have already flown down, right? We're just reading the text that we explained. Right. Can someone answer this question? We're repeating the same concepts because everything here is connected. Has the highest compliance. Perfect. Perfect. We said veins are most compliant. That's why they're blood reservoirs. Now we have a completely different concept. Right? This is how sympathetic stimulation affects the arteries versus the veins. Right? We said the arteries have lower compliance. صح ولا لا? And veins have higher compliance. Due to this, when I constrict an artery, it raises the pressure more. طيب? Because the pressure in them أصلا it's already higher. Already has higher pressure. طيب? And they have lower compliance. طيب? When I constrict the arteries, it raises more pressure. طيب? يعني let's say I have a graph. طيب? And we're stimulating the veins here. We're increasing the شو اسمه sympathetic stimulation, and we have the blood pressure. طيب? If I increase the sympathetic stimulation, the artery is going to go like this. طيب? The blood pressure is going to go like this. Because as you're increasing the sympathetic stimulation, the blood pressure is increasing very rapidly. Meanwhile, in the vein, you increase the sympathetic stimulation, you're constricting, the blood pressure is going to go like this. It's not going to increase that much. طيب? That's the point I'm trying to demonstrate. This same graph is in your slides, but it's not important for you to know the graph. The graph is there for you to understand the concept. I want you to understand that when you constrict arteries, they increase the pressure more. This is per unit change in volume. Don't worry about the units, don't worry. طيب? Is this clear to you guys? Does anyone want me to repeat? Perfect. Thumbs up. Perfect. Nice. Nice. Okay. Perfect. Let's talk about pulse pressure. Does anyone know what pulse pressure is? I want someone to give me a definition. I want to see what you guys, 120 over 80. 120 over 80. Okay, look, you gave me two numbers, type. I'm glad you answered because you gave me something to work with, type. 120 over 80 is the systolic over the diastolic. The pulse pressure is the difference, exactly, thank you. The pressure between the diastolic and the systolic, طيب? But if the systolic is 120 and the diastolic is 80, then the pulse pressure is going to be 40. طيب? 120 minus 80. Let's look at the slides. Here we have the pressure reading that we had earlier. We said that it was 120 over 80. Sorry, this should be at the arteries. طيب? At the arteries after this, it's 120 over 80. If I just do 120 minus 80 equals 40. طيب? So I'll fix this in the slide, inshallah. Don't worry about this. طيب? Now here's a concept that I want you to understand. طيب? Pulse pressure is directly proportional to stroke volume. ليش? The systolic blood pressure, طيب, the systolic blood pressure, this peak right here, is after the ventricle contracted. طيب, it's due to the blood that has been pushed out. The systolic blood pressure is due to the blood that's been pushed out. If you're pushing out more blood, out of the heart, you're going to have a higher systolic pressure. طيب, the pressure is going to be like up here. This increase in the difference is going to increase the pulse pressure. طيب? For anything that increases stroke volume, which is how much blood is pumping out of the heart per beat, is going to increase the pulse pressure. طيب? Is this clear? Does this concept make sense? because this is really important. They might tell you, in the wall, this person has low pulse pressure. What does this indicate? It indicates they have a lower stroke volume. Right? And we're going to talk about different things that affect pulse pressure. But I want to make sure you guys understood it before we move on to examples. Right? Thumbs up, clear. It's for the RT2. They want to, yes, this is for, look, I have it on left ventricle, so I'm sorry. Right? This should be for the arteries. In arteries, it's 120 over 80. Right? Don't worry about the aorta. Yeah, aorta or arteries. Aorta is an artery. Aorta is the biggest artery. And in the aorta, the systolic pressure is 120 and the diastolic is 80. Right? For the pulse pressure, the difference between the two is 40. Right? Is this clear? Yes, perfect. I'm glad. Right. We said it's directly proportional to stroke volume. It's indirectly proportional to compliance. Haha. طيب. If a blood vessel is more compliant, lower pulse pressure equals lower pulse volume. Yani not 100% of the time, but you can say that lower stroke volume leads to lower pulse pressure. طيب. Lower stroke volume leads to lower pulse pressure. Is this clear? Perfect. Perfect. طيب. If we had a vessel with more compliance than another one, طيب. If we had a vessel with higher compliance than another one, it's gonna end up having a lower systolic pressure. طيب. It's gonna end up having a lower systolic pressure. ليش؟ sorry. We said higher compliance. If a blood vessel has higher compliance, طيب, it's gonna have we said it's gonna have a lower systolic pressure. This is because it's accepting the blood more. طيب. This is why it's indirectly proportional to the compliance. طيب. If more compliance, less change in pressure. More compliance, less change in pressure. Look, it's indirectly proportional to the that's true. Less change in pressure. That is true. That's true. Because it's accepting more. صح, that's perfect. Because we said that the compliance is how much it accepts the blood when you increase the pressure. So مثلا, look, I increase the pressure by 5. طيب. If a vessel has higher compliance, the volume shoots up. طيب. If it has lower compliance, it doesn't go up by a lot. But we're talking about the pressure difference here. A vessel with higher compliance, طيب, a vessel with higher compliance is going to have a less change in pressure. طيب. لأنه خلاص, you reached where you want to be with volume without increasing pressure by that much. طيب. Is that clear? Can I get a thumbs up? All good? Okay, perfect. طيب. Here's a concept that, again, I want you to understand. طيب. Compliance decreases with age due to increased stiffness. As a person grows up, if a person is like 80, their blood vessels are stiffer. They're more like pipes. طيب. They accept blood less. طيب. So you need to cause a really high change in pressure in order to fill them up with volume. طيب. So because of this, an older person will have a higher pulse pressure. طيب. This doesn't have to do with their stroke volume. This doesn't mean that their heart is pumping more blood. لا. It's not unrelated. طيب. This is a relationship and this is another relationship. طيب. This is because the vessels need a bigger change in pressure to accept the blood. So they end up having a higher pulse pressure. Is this clear? If this is clear, I'm going to move on. طيب. What affects the pulse pressure? If you have something called atherosclerosis, طيب. Atherosclerosis is basically this buildup of a plaque. طيب. This plaque right here, طيب, in this vessel, is going to cause the vessel to be stiffer. صح ولا لا? But it's going to decrease the compliance and it's going to increase the pulse pressure. Another thing is something called patent ductus arteriosus. This is a congenital defect. A person was born with this. This causes a shunt, a connection between the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So it doesn't cause it. This is it's normal in the fetal life, but it's supposed to close when someone is born. Right? Some people are born and it's still open, and it needs to be corrected surgically. طيب. Due to this, there's going to be an increased pulse pressure. ليش? Because first of all, the diastolic pressure is going to be lower. And this means that the pressure in the aorta is going to be lower during diastole when it's relaxing. طيب, because blood is going back. طيب. At the same time, there's going to be higher systolic pressure. And the pressure when the ventricle is contracting and the aorta is going to be higher. طيب. But this is going to cause a greater difference, and it's going to cause an increased pulse pressure. طيب. They could very simply give you a question and tell you, wallah, which of the following is a case where there is increased pulse pressure? And they'll give you three options where there's decreased pulse pressure, and one of them is patent ductus arteriosus, and you choose patent ductus arteriosus. But is it clear? It can be confusing. But صراحة, يعني, this is something I want you to remember. Can you re-explain why patent ductus arteriosus increases systolic pressure and decreases diastolic? طيب. Let me tell you. If you have a connection between the aorta and the pulmonary artery, طيب. If you have a connection between the aorta and the pulmonary artery, this is going to cause a higher stroke volume. Yani you're technically pushing more blood out. طيب. Technically, not actually, but you're technically pushing more blood out. طيب. That on its own is going to increase pulse pressure or systolic pressure. طيب. At the same time, you have decreased diastolic pressure. ليش you have decreased diastolic pressure? This is because blood is leaking out of the aorta. You're relaxing, the ventricle is relaxing, blood is leaking out the aorta into the pulmonary artery. طيب. So when the ventricle is relaxing, there's going to be really low pressure in the aorta. طيب. So that's why the diastolic pressure is going to be lower, systolic pressure is going to be higher. Does this make sense? See, thank you. Okay. طيب. I'm glad. طيب. We have two more things that affect pulse pressure. طيب. The first one is called aortic regurgitation. Regurgitation means that there's backflow of blood. طيب. If it's at the aorta, that means it's at the aortic valve. طيب. But when you're ejecting blood out of the left ventricle into the aorta, some blood is going back. طيب. This decreases the low diastolic pressure due to the same concept that we had here. طيب. Because blood is leaking, there's going to be less blood in the aorta during diastole, but the diastolic pressure is going to be lower. So this is going to cause a greater difference, and it's going to be a higher pulse pressure. طيب. Another example is something called aortic stenosis. طيب. Aortic stenosis is basically when the aortic valve is narrowed. It's closed up a little bit. طيب. If the aortic valve is narrowed, you're going to be able to eject less blood. And you're pushing through a smaller hole. طيب. So there's going to be a smaller stroke volume. طيب. This smaller stroke volume يعني خلاص connected directly in less stroke volume is less pulse pressure. طيب. If you want to go into systolic and diastolic, it's simple. You have less blood going out. For during systole, there's less blood there, and during diastole, during diastole, it's not شو اسمه, it's not as big of a difference because the systolic is not increasing that much. طيب. Are these two clear? Are these four clear حتى? Does anyone want me to repeat anything? All good? But it's in diastole, right, in stenosis. Look, it's more. You mean it's more? No. Stenosis just means that the valve is narrowed. It doesn't have to do with the heart being in systole or diastole. طيب. It doesn't have to do with the heart being in systole or diastole. In stenosis, you're able to push less blood out, so the stroke volume is less, so the pulse pressure is less, because the difference between the systolic and diastolic is less. Is this clear? Okay, I'm glad. Perfect. We have another concept relating to the pulse pressure. This is called the pulse wave velocity. طيب. I want you to think of this as, let's say your heart pumped right now. طيب. The speed at which the pulse travels, yani the pulse that you can feel travels from your heart to the rest of your body, is called the pulse wave velocity. طيب. If I have a vessel طيب, that's stiff, and I push through it, because it doesn't expand as easily, the pulse is going to travel through it faster. طيب, if a vessel is stiff, blood is going to travel through it faster because it's not distending as easily. طيب, it's not opening up as easily. طيب, is this clear? So I'll move on to I'll give you the opposite example so it makes sense. If a vessel had high compliance, طيب, and you pushed blood through it and it distended a lot, طيب, it accepted the we jumped slides. Where were we? And it distended a lot. طيب, if a vessel had high compliance and we pushed blood through it and it distended a lot, the blood is going to stay there. It's going to be slower, but there's going to be a lower pulse wave velocity. طيب, let's read the text. And if anyone wants me to repeat, let me know. طيب. When the artery resists expansion, the veins transmit rapidly. Very simple. If you're building a pipe and you want the fluid to travel through as fast as possible, you want it to be rigid. You don't want it to be expanding and slowing down on the way there. طيب? But they might literally bring you a question. They'll tell you, which of the following is going to have a higher pulse wave velocity? Is it a vessel with high compliance or a vessel with low compliance, or two other options? طيب? You pick that it has lower compliance. Because it has lower compliance, blood the vessel isn't accepting the blood as much. It's acting like a rigid tube, and the velocity is going to be higher. طيب? But the greater the arterial compliance, the slower the velocity of the pulse pressure. طيب? Is this clear? I'm moving on. طيب. I have a question. I'm going to read this question and I want you guys to type in the answer. A 60-year-old man, طيب, a 60-year-old man, okay, visits his family practitioner for his yearly examination. He has a blood pressure of 180 over 100. طيب. So 180 over 100, the difference is 80. He has a high pulse pressure. طيب. A heart rate of 78 and a pulse pressure of 80. They gave you that pulse pressure. طيب. His plasma cholesterol level is in the upper 25%. طيب. A decrease in which of the following is the most likely explanation for the high pulse pressure? Is it stroke volume or arterial pressure, heart rate, okay. So someone said D. Someone said that the lower arterial compliance caused a higher pulse pressure. هلا أكيد a lower arterial compliance caused a higher pulse pressure. But can someone tell me why this patient has a lower compliance أصلا? There's two reasons. He doesn't just have just one reason. He has two reasons. Right? You're completely right. It's D. Age. Perfect. Age. The arteries are stiffer with age. He's old. He's very old. Thank you so much. Cholesterol. Age and cholesterol. His plasma cholesterol level is in the upper 25%. We talked about atherosclerosis. This plaque builds up right here because of the high cholesterol. So this guy has two factors. And when you see a case like this, when you see a long question like this, I want you to look at the things that stand out to you. He's old. طيب. His high pulse pressure. ليش? Because of his high cholesterol and his age. طيب. Straightforward. So he has lower arterial compliance, so his pulse pressure is high. طيب. Is this clear? Do I move on? All good? I'm gonna keep going. طيب. The next thing we'll talk about is called mean arterial pressure. Mean arterial pressure is basically from the name, it's the average or the mean pressure in the arteries. طيب. And you think about all the arteries in your body, you're averaging them out. طيب. It represents the driving force that pushes blood through the systemic circulation and ensures tissue perfusion. طيب. يعني if someone has a very low mean arterial pressure, the blood isn't pushing through as easily and blood isn't reaching the organs as good. طيب. There are two formulas for mean arterial pressure and you need to remember both of them. طيب. You need to remember both of them and understand them حتى. طيب. بس it's يعني the understanding part is more important for other lectures. The mean arterial pressure is equals the diastolic pressure over 1/3 the pulse pressure. طيب. This one is for pure calculation. And this one, they might literally give you the diastolic pressure and the pulse pressure and ask you to calculate the mean arterial pressure. طيب. The second one is really important for understanding that the mean arterial pressure equals the cardiac output times systemic vascular resistance. طيب. If someone has a drop in mean arterial pressure, you want to increase one of these to bring it back. And you want to make the heart either pump more to increase cardiac output, or you want the vascular resistance to go up by constricting vessels. Right? Is this clear? Everything good? Okay. Can you repeat? طيب. We said the mean arterial pressure is the average pressure in all the arteries. طيب. You're taking all the arteries and you're averaging them out. طيب. It's directly related to the cardiac output and the systemic vascular resistance. The cardiac output is how much blood your heart is pushing out per minute. طيب. يعني how much volume of blood your heart is pushing out. The systemic vascular resistance has to do with how constricted or dilated or how clogged up the rest of your body's vessels are. طيب. If there's a higher systemic vascular resistance, there's going to be a higher arterial pressure. طيب. If there's a higher cardiac output, you're pushing more blood, there's a higher arterial pressure. If one of these drops, you want to increase the other. If the systemic vascular resistance drops, your body is going to naturally bring up the cardiac output. If the cardiac output drops, you're naturally going to bring up the systemic vascular resistance. This is explained in depth in the control of cardiac output lecture, in depth. But it's mentioned here, I just wanted you guys to get an overview about it so that it doesn't confuse you. طيب? Is this clear? Did it make sense now? طيب. Perfect. We talked about all these properties of blood, resistance, compliance, a million things. طيب. How does the blood actually flow? What are the different ways blood can actually flow through your body? Normally, you have a vessel, your blood flows like this, literally in layers. And it's the most organized thing on the planet. طيب. It flows in layers. Another word for layered is called laminar, but it's called laminar flow. طيب. In this laminar flow, let's have another picture. In this laminar flow, the blood in the middle, look, you have layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The blood in the middle is going to be faster. The blood in the middle is going to be faster. The blood on the sides is going to be slower. طيب. I just want you guys to understand that. طيب. How can this be different? How can blood flow be not laminar? It can look somewhat like this. This is called turbulent flow. طيب. As you can see, the blood is hitting the walls, it's going left and right. طيب. It's not in layers at all. The blood in the middle isn't faster, nothing. طيب. And this can cause some diseases. طيب. Let's talk about these diseases. طيب. Actually, let's first review, sorry. Laminar flow is where the center blood layer is faster than the normal. Is the blood on the edge, طيب, due to the resistance of blood vessel. طيب. Turbulent flow is where blood layers flow in something called eddy currents or whirls. طيب. As you can see here, they're whirling. طيب. There are different things that can cause turbulent flow. طيب. There are different things that cause turbulent flow. If there's a sharp turn in the circulation, if blood is flowing and there's a sharp turn, let me draw. It's going like this, it might become all turbulent. طيب. If there's a rough surface like this right here, like this narrowing, this might be a plaque, this might be atherosclerosis, whatever maybe. This can cause, as you can see, it was laminar and then it became turbulent. The last one is rapid narrowing. And if your vessels suddenly constrict, they might become turbulent for a bit. Right? Is this clear? I want you guys to think of laminar as people driving all organized in layers and turbulent as people drifting. حرفيا. The blood is going, hitting the wall and causing a lot of bad things. Some of those bad things that turbulent flow can cause are something called an aneurysm and something called atherosclerosis. Let's talk about aneurysm. An aneurysm can happen anywhere, brother. It can happen in any vessel. Right? This is an example. Right? It's where this vessel balloons up. Can high velocity be a reason too? Yes, it can be a reason too, but it has to hit something basically. Look, sharp turns. It can either be moving and it hits a sharp turn and it becomes turbulent. It has a rough surface. It hits it and it starts becoming turbulent. It has a rapid narrowing, it becomes turbulent. Right? In an aneurysm, turbulent flow is causing blood to hit the wall so much that the vessel balloons up. طيب? That the vessel starts expanding like this. طيب? Because blood is hitting the wall so much. طيب? And this is caused due to several factors. يعني the wall is weak and so on. طيب? But I just want you to understand that blood hitting the wall can cause bad things. One of them is aneurysm because the vessel is expanding. طيب? Because you're hitting the wall, the vessel is expanding. Another thing is atherosclerosis, which we already talked about. Due to the blood hitting the wall, it can deposit more cholesterol and other materials. طيب? So this can cause plaques. طيب? I want you guys to remember these. And a turbulent flow can cause an aneurysm. Turbulent flow can cause atherosclerosis. Is this clear? Does anyone want me to repeat anything? Perfect. Perfect. Turbulent flow increases wall stress. You're increasing the stress on the wall, and this can cause aneurysm, and it can cause atherosclerosis, which is buildup of stuff in the vessel. Right? Now we have the last concept. I know you guys are really tired. This is the very last concept of this lecture. Right? If we have a vessel, right? I want you to imagine that these circles right here are proteins, and these are fluids. Right? If we have a vessel, and we have proteins inside this vessel, from your knowledge in F&D, these proteins are going to suck blood inside. طيب? And this is called the plasma colloid osmotic pressure. طيب? These vessels are going to suck blood inside, and these proteins are going to suck blood inside, and this is called the plasma colloid osmotic pressure. يعني when you see osmotic, I want you to think proteins على طول. طيب? Sorry, colloid, I want you to think proteins. طيب? Osmotic pressure is due to the proteins. When you hear plasma, I want you to think inside the vessel. طيب? وكمان when you see pi, proteins على طول. P plasma. P for plasma. Pi is proteins. طيب? Or colloid. Okay. If you have fluids inside the vessel, this fluid wants to leave. This fluid, and it doesn't attract the fluid that's outside. No. The fluid wants to leave. This pressure, this force where it wants to leave, is called the capillary pressure. طيب? The fluid wanted to leave. It's shown by this PC. طيب? طيب. If you have fluid outside, this fluid wants to enter. This pressure is called interstitial fluid pressure. The interstitium is the space between blood vessels. And if you have a blood vessel here and blood vessel here, طيب, the space between them is called the interstitium. طيب, the fluid wants to enter here, enter here. The fluid that it's exerting is called the interstitial fluid pressure, طيب, or PIF. طيب. Lastly, if you have proteins outside, they're gonna suck the fluid out, طيب, because the proteins attract the fluid. طيب. And this last one is called interstitial fluid osmotic pressure. Because you have proteins in the interstitial space, they're exerting an osmotic pressure. So this is called the interstitial fluid osmotic pressure, right? Or the pi interstitial fluid, or the protein interstitial fluid. Is this clear? Are these four clear? Do you guys understand how fluid basically always wants to leave and protein attracts the fluid? Like, do you guys understand these different forces? Because now we're going to combine them. طيب. Is this clear? I'm moving on. طيب. So outwards are PC and interstitial fluid osmotic. PC is what? PC is the capillary pressure. It pushes it outside. The other one that pushes it outside is protein, which is outside, which is PIF. طيب? Exactly. So you're right. Interstitial outwards are PC and interstitial fluid osmotic. Exactly. Inwards, the opposite is fluid. Inwards is fluid outside, which is interstitial fluid pressure, or proteins inside, which is plasma colloid osmotic pressure. Right? These forces, they all happen at the same time. They have a balance. Right? So let's combine them. We said we have the plasma colloid osmotic pressure pulling inside, and we have the interstitial fluid hydrostatic or the fluid pressure. Right? These push inside. At the same time, in the same vessel, all over your body, you also have the proteins outside, or the interstitial fluid colloid osmotic pressure, pulling the fluid outside, and fluid inside, which is the hydrostatic pressure or the fluid pressure, capillary pressure, wanting to leave. So you have all these forces at the same time. طيب. They all have some kind of equilibrium or balance. There's always fluid leaving and fluid entering. طيب. This equilibrium or this balance is called the net filtration pressure. طيب. You're basically adding you're taking the forces that want fluid to leave and you're subtracting them from what they want to enter. طيب. If this is positive, then fluid is leaving. Very simple. طيب. I want you to memorize this formula like your name because they seriously might get you a question on it. And no, the hydrostatic capillary pressure, positive filtration, exactly. If net filtration pressure is positive, you have filtration. If the fluid inside the capillary is high, it wants to leave. If the fluid inside the interstitial is high, it wants to enter. So you subtract them, right? You're subtracting the thing that wants to the thing that wants to leave from the thing that wants to enter. And you're doing the same thing with the proteins, then you're subtracting the two numbers. If the number is positive, you have filtration. If it's not, if it's negative, you have the opposite. Right? What happens if there's too much filtration? You're going to have edema. This is where fluid accumulates in the interstitial fluid. You have a vessel here and a vessel here. If all the vessels are releasing blood, are filtrating blood, there's going to be fluid accumulating between them, and this is going to look like this. It's called edema. طيب? If you guys understand this, I want you to answer this question. I want you guys to calculate this. طيب? If you don't remember the equation, I'll put it. طيب? NF equals PC minus PIF. Oh, let's say even if you saw the answer, I want you guys to calculate this. طيب? PC minus PIF. طيب? Okay. And then you have the one that wants to leave, which is which one? Which is the interstitial colloid. Okay. The interstitial colloid, PI E. Exactly. PI minus the one that wants to enter, which is plasma colloid osmotic pressure. Okay. Which is like this. طيب. Pi P. طيب. If you calculate it, I'm not going to do it now for the sake of time because we took way too much time. It's going to be E. طيب. Is this clear to everyone? It's a calculation question. حرفيا it has no there's no thinking to it. طيب. You just see it and you calculate and you put the answer. طيب. You don't need the arterial pressure. The venous hydrostatic pressure is the one inside the vessel. طيب. I want you to use the capillary. طيب. Because the capillary is where the filtration happens. طيب. Is this clear? I'm moving on. طيب. We have two more questions, I think, طيب, and then we're done for the session. Can someone answer this? Just type in your answer. Which of the following will increase venous hydrostatic pressure in the legs? I can also calculate the sum of two. Look, there's a lot of ways to calculate it. The formula has a million arrangements. طيب. Make sure that the one you memorize is correct. If you get confused, just memorize this one. طيب. Someone said A. Someone said, like, this is a short question, but it makes you think. A decrease in the right atrial pressure. Why would can you tell me why do you think it's A? Why do you think a decrease in the right atrial pressure would increase hydrostatic pressure, which is fluid pressure in the legs? Someone said B, pregnancy. Top, guys, give me an answer. Inversely proportional. Why? دخل inversely proportional. What's your answer? A. Oh, no, they're not inversely proportional. If the right atrial pressure is increasing, you have higher venous return. Actually, that's an increase in C, because they constrict the veins. Movement, no, because you have more fluid here. Hydrostatic pressure means you have more fluid. You guys are close. I like how you're thinking شو اسمه, in a smart way about this. Because I think only one person said B. Because I want you to tell me why it's B. Person who said B, why is it B? I want you to type in the chat. Tell me why do you think it's B? Come on, man. You gotta say B and guess it and then not tell me why. Blood is also flowing to the placenta. No. Close but no. Come on. More blood flow. Look, this is, this is a really annoying question, but I put this here, so you guys see it in this way. طيب? Not the blood volume. If someone is pregnant, طيب, they're not, look, in the legs. They said in the legs. This is the key word. طيب? If someone is pregnant, they're not moving around as much. طيب? Pregnancy has more pressure than normal, pretty much. Close. If someone is pregnant, they're not moving around as much. They're sitting down, طيب, they're not walking around as much. There's more blood going down, but the hydrostatic pressure, the amount of fluid in the legs is increasing. That's simple. Not that simple, Salah. It's that weird of a question. But this is a real question. I didn't make this up. طيب? All of these questions that are in the slides are either from Guyton or past questions. That's edema. Yes, this will cause edema. Yes, you're completely right. If the hydrostatic pressure gets really high, this can cause edema. Does everyone understand this? Does this make sense? I think we have one more question, or we're done. I'm not sure. Does anyone want me to repeat? Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to move on to the next question. طيب. An increase in which of the following would tend to decrease filtration? This lecture needs lots of solving, and I have you guys hooked up with that. I have practice questions that will be in the description of this, and there's questions in the feedback. But for now, let's solve this one. An increase in which of the following would tend to decrease filtration rate. Decrease, and you have less fluid leaving. طيب. And you have more fluid entering. طيب. E, someone said E. Plasma, colloid, osmotic pressure. طيب, let's break it down. Plasma is inside. طيب. Colloid is proteins. You have proteins inside. طيب. طيب. If you have proteins inside, are they going to suck the blood in or are they going to push it out? They're going to suck it in. طيب. That's exactly what it is. The person who said B. We never talked about hydraulic conductivity. I don't want you to even think about hydraulics here. طيب. If they talk about filtration, they're gonna ask about either the fluid inside or the fluids outside or the proteins inside or the proteins outside. Right? It's gonna be one of the forces we talked about. Is this clear? Sometimes they put distracted like that. I like that you look at the questions in a really, I don't understand this. No problem. Look, we have 4 different forces: proteins inside, proteins outside, fluids inside, and fluids outside. Right? Proteins inside will suck fluid in. Proteins outside will suck fluid out. We also call proteins colloid. Anytime you see the word colloid, I want you to think proteins. طيب. Fluids want to leave and proteins push the fluid in. طيب. If the proteins inside decrease, طيب. If proteins inside decrease, then the fluid is going to go out. No, sorry. Sorry. I flipped it. If the proteins inside increase, I'm sorry. If the proteins inside increase, then they're going to suck the blood in. طيب. So you're going to have less filtration because blood isn't leaving as much. Filtration is when the blood is leaving. Does this make sense? Did you get it now? Yes, I'm so glad. Does anyone have any other questions? Does anyone have anything they want me to repeat? Because we're done. At this point, this is the last question. We're going to have the feedback. I want you guys to solve the questions in the feedback. And I want you guys to, when this video is uploaded, I want you to go to the description and solve the questions that I have there. طيب. This is some more information that isn't important at all. طيب. حرفيا I just put it here and sake for completion. And some fluid, the fluid that is filtered is reabsorbed in the veins. Some of it is returned by the lymph. طيب. That is it. Thank you so much for attending. 1 hour and 34 minutes. I'm sure you guys are wasted by now. There's a lot of complicated concepts in here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information here. طيب. Make sure to scan this QR code where you have feedback. You can type what you think about the session, and there's also going to be practice questions that you can solve. And when this is uploaded, there's going to be practice questions in the description that I made. some of them are past questions, some of them are practice questions from the book. طيب. But they're all very high yield, they're all very similar to the type of questions you get. طيب. That is it. Thank you guys so much.